Hello everyone, I would like to welcome you again to the Customer Relation Monthly Webinar, live webinar. This specific webinar will be about discover and monitor your SNMP devices. My name is Baranes Hanan, I'm SysAid Professional Services Manager, and again, welcome you all to our live webinar. This specific webinar will have the following parts. First will be a short introduction to the issue by me. Then Joseph Zargaro, which is team leader in the Customer Relation Department, will give some technical highlights. The next step in this specific webinar, we would like you to fill out a short survey. This survey will allow us to improve the level of webinars that we will provide you in the next month, and just to improve the level of service, and again to hear a little bit from you. What do you think about these webinars, the level of the technical level of this webinar, and things like that. So that will help us to improve our next webinars in the future. Then some best practices by Sarah Lav, which is VP of Customer Relation here in SysAid. Our representatives are available for your questions on our online chat. The icon for the chat is on the top right of your screen. We know that in previous webinars you didn't made a full usage of this chat. You can ask any questions, starting from technical one and non-technical question regarding this webinar or any other issues that you have within SysAid. So use the chat on the top right section of your screen, and our technical representatives are waiting for you. Sorry for the short interruption, just network issues here. So we are back live in this webinar. Again, the agenda, introduction, technical highlights, short survey, and some best practices by Sarah La, VP of Customer Relation. So what is SNMP? First, SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol. In general, SNMP is Internet Standard Protocol for managing devices on IP networks. It operates on the application layer of an Internet Protocol suite. If you know, it's this layer 7 of the OSI model. Devices that are typically support SNMP protocol includes routers, switches, servers, workstation, even phones support this specific protocol, the SNMP. The SNMP does not define a specific structure or what will be the exact details to be transferred between the SNMP device and the management tool that you are using. Instead, it's defining MIB and OIDs. MIB is a structural data containing all the relevant details that you would like to store about your SNMP devices, and each and every field or value that you want to keep about this SNMP device will be stored inside OID, which is Object Identifier. Again, the usage of OID within SysAid will be shown by Joseph in the technical part of this specific webinar. Regarding ports in use, you probably are interested in terms of security and what you need to open inside your network in order to allow continuous communication between SNMP devices and the SysAid server. So port 161 and 162 for requests and responses. The responses are basically the traps that will be sent from the SNMP device. So this is the two ports that you need to open inside your network between the SysAid server and the SNMP devices. 3 versions of the protocol exist. By the way, all 3 are fully supported by the SysAid application. V1 back there in 1988 was the initial implementation. Then version 2 with some performance and security improvement, and the last version we know about is the V3, and again addition of security levels inside the protocol itself in 2004, and this is the last version that we know and we have at the moment. What can you do with SNMP within SysAid? 3 major items can be done SNMP and SysAid. First is discover. Using SysAid, you can discover all of your SNMP devices. Joseph, again, will show you how it's done inside SysAid. You can discover all of the routers, switches, firewalls inside your network. Then you can manage them using SysAid, whether you would like to do it in the asset management module or take one level further in the CMDB module within SysAid. So again, SysAid allows you to manage these devices inside the application itself. And the last thing SysAid allows is to monitor these devices, get all the relevant details, and using the trap mechanism inside the product, defined inside the protocol itself. So this was a short introduction by me. Now I would like to over the mic to Joseph, which is a team leader in the customer relation. You're probably familiar with Joseph. He will give you some technical highlights of using the SNMP module within SysAid. So Joseph, please.
Thank you very much, Hanan. I would like to continue basically what Hanan started to explain about SNMP, giving an introduction on the protocol. Well, being an internet standard protocol, most of the network devices will support SNMP protocol. Anything with a network jack that you can plug into the network will probably have support in the SNMP protocol and are SNMP discoverable. Hanan stated a couple ports. I'm going to state one for the discovery is using port 161, and that's a UDP port. Both ports Hanan mentioned are UDP ports. What SysAid is going to do, you're going to define an IP range that you're going to ask SysAid to scan. SysAid will go through each and every IP address in that range and will check if that device responds on UDP port 161. If it will report back all the inventory information SysAid requests from that device. Let me just put the whole screen for you so you can see my presentation in more depth. I mentioned here that in case of devices located on remote networks, you do have the option to use the remote discovery service to detect those devices. If you have remote networks, those network devices aren't discoverable from the internet, so we can use the SysAid remote discovery service to detect them. And the last part for today's session, we'll discuss monitoring capabilities for SNMP devices. Let's start by looking into a network diagram to see how SysAid does the scan. So you have a local network. In case we have a local network with your devices located within the same network as the SysAid server, what's going to happen, SysAid knows the IP range you want to scan, and it will just try to connect to each and every IP addresses in that range and see if that device responds on the SNMP port, on the SNMP protocol. The ones that will be discoverable, the ones that will respond, will return back information back to the SysAid server. The ones that don't, or IP addresses that are not used by a device, it will just hit a brick wall. It will not get any information back. It will only get information back from the SNMP devices. In my example here, you can see IP phones, you can see wireless access points, you can see a projector, printer, any device that basically plugs into the network and supports the SNMP protocol will return back the information back to the SysAid server. SysAid will then pick up all that information and insert it into the asset database, and then you'll have access to all the SNMP discovered assets. Now what happens when you have a remote network, okay, located somewhere out there on the internet, probably a different location. In some cases you will have a VPN connection to that network, in other cases you won't. It could be protected by a firewall, it could be over the internet, so that's even more protection. And SysAid can't really connect to these devices and discover them. What we offer to cope with these situations is the SysAid Remote Discovery Service. You can take any Windows clients and install the SysAid Remote Discovery Service on it, which is basically a slim version of the SysAid server. It only contains that discovery component, and it's going to stay there. It's going to run there all the time. Whenever you choose you want to do a discovery on the remote network, you're going to issue a request for the remote discovery service to run a detection on the IP range that is relevant to that network. It's going to do pretty much the same thing. It's going to try to query each and every IP address in that range. Whatever responds on the SNMP protocol will report back information to the remote discovery service. When the scan ends, when all the IP addresses were scanned and responses has been received, SysAid remote discovery service will pick up all that information and post it back to the SysAid server over the internet, over your VPN connection, whatever connection available to the SysAid server. It will report the information that way. Of course, you need to make sure the SysAid server is accessible from the internet, or at least from these remote locations, so the remote discovery service will be able to report back to the SysAid server. And that's being done over the HTTP protocol on the port you're using with SysAid, which is 8080 by default, unless you chose to use a different port. You need to make sure that port is available and SysAid is accessible from the internet in that protocol. Let's see how that's configured. What you have if you go into SysAid under Asset Management, you have the Network Discovery page. It has several different tabs here. What we're looking at is the SNMP scan, and this allows us to configure the SNMP discovery. You can see I have two scans configured here. One is being configured to be performed from the SysAid server. This is the embedded discovery service on the SysAid server itself, and it scans the IP range of that local network. Okay, I chose to use SNMP version 1, but from that drop down, when you configure that scan, you can choose version 2 or version 3. I would recommend to start with either version 1 or 2, which allow you to pull information kind of anonymously. All you need to know is the community string, which is configured on the devices themselves. Most of them, or maybe all of them, are shipped with public by default as the community string. Unless you changed it, you should keep it at public. Password is not required because password isn't relevant to version 1 and 2. It's only available in version 3. That's the added security they added in the standard for SNMP version 3. It requires authentication to pull in information, and that's not relevant for version 1 and 2. If you need to exclude an IP address or several IP addresses from that scan, if you have certain devices you don't want to find using the SNMP protocol, you can add them to the exclude IP list here. If you have more than one, use a comma to separate those IP addresses. If you want to run this scan regularly, you can schedule it to occur once a day or once a week, or maybe twice twice a month or something like that. Basically, you'll need to configure the next scan and how often to scan afterwards. In my case, I configured both scans to run daily at 9 a.m. This is a 24-hour clock, so if you want to do it at 9 p.m. you should do 2100. And basically the whole difference between the two scans here, it's running on two different IP ranges, and they are running by different discovery services. So the discovery service embedded into the SysAid server will only be able to find devices on that particular local network. And I have a remote discovery service on a computer named IT001, and that one scans on a different IP range. Aside of these scheduled scans, you can also click Run Now to trigger the scan to occur instantly. So the scans are being done, assets are being pulled, information is being detected. What happens, what kind of information is being reported back into SysAid. When SysAid finds a device that is SNMP responsive, it's going to trigger queries on many different OIDs. As Hanan started to explain, OIDs are, you can look at it as addresses where the device stores information. So if you want to get, let's say, the name of the device, you can just query that OID 1.3.6.1.2.1.1.5.0, and the standard determines that this specific OID in all devices should return the name of the device. Okay, so this is going to be pulled with by querying that specific OID, that specific address. And what you're seeing in my slide here is basically the default OIDs, the ones that are defined in the standard. Aside of those, each vendor, each manufacturer could say that they want to provide you more information than what's required on the standard. For example, printers could report back how many pages were printed since the device is there. They could tell you how many of those pages are printed double-sided. It could tell you how much toner is left on the printer. It could even tell you how much paper is available in the tray. So all you have to do is just study those devices, figure out the OIDs that these devices offer, and make sure that you know what each OID returns. Okay, because if an OID returns a certain type of data, for example, uptime will be reported in a text format. So this should be binded or mapped with a text field, with a text type field. If you're gonna set up this to point to an integer field, that's not gonna work because an integer field can only accept numbers. So you should make sure you know what type of data to expect and what type of field could support that data. You could also, if you add more OIDs, you can define a filter for them, and the filter can be configured, to, let's say if you want to bring in information about how much toner is left on a printer, and you know this OID only applies to Xerox machines, to Xerox printers, then maybe you should do a filter on the manufacturer or description, something like that, saying only bring in that OID if the manufacturer is Xerox. That way, SysAid will not try to query that OID for any type of SNMP device. Another option we enabled here is the ability to edit the information. For example, if you want to change the name of the device, you can, if that checkbox here is ticked and the device supports it, you can change the name of the device in SysAid, and that will connect to the printer and update the name of the device there as well. Now, when we look into a device that is discovered with SNMP, I have a printer here I discovered earlier this month. You can see that we get the name for that device, and this button here allows us to edit the name of the device if you configure to allow that, and the device supports it. We can see that it took the type, which is printer. It took information, it took the description of that device, which contains the manufacturer, the model, the firmware version and date, and you can even scroll to the right here. It's just a screenshot, so I can't really show you, but it contains some more information about the device. This is what Samsung decided to provide for description on the SNMP protocol. You can also see that it detected the network adapter, the network interface, and information about the network interface right here. If that would have been a switch, you would see more interfaces here. You would see if that's a 48 port switch, you would see more than 48 interfaces here, one for each switch port, and a few more, you know, for the management port and virtual ports and all that additional ports. So you'll see more than 48 adapters on the network part, and they're all going to show up here with their information. You can see under source that this has been detected by SNMP, and you can even click update now to trigger an update specifically on that device only, not on all SNMP devices. In addition, you can see I took a custom field, a custom integer field, and renamed it to tone left, and I also mapped the OID that returns the percentage of tone left. In my case here, that was 47% of toner left. So still a long way to go until that toner runs out and I need to get a newer one. So this is what we get in the asset form for SNMP devices. This is a standard form, same as you know, workstations and servers. You can add more fields to that form and use these fields for SNMP devices. By the way, we offer 20 customized text fields for the SNMP purpose. Of course, you can use it for any purpose you want, but those were added for the SNMP purpose, and you can use those to store information pulled in from OIDs. My next topic is monitoring, and let's look at what are the possible monitoring options that we have. When you scan a device using SNMP, you get that as an asset. It's great. You get the inventory information for that asset. Monitoring gives you greater capabilities. You can get notifications when a certain event happens, and the scenarios I have here, or the test types I have here, are what's possible with SNMP. So network services allows you to ping the device and trigger a notification if it suddenly stops responding to a ping. You can also test a certain TCP port for responsiveness to see if that device accepts connection on that port. So for example, if you have a printer that has a web interface to control it, you can do a network test on TCP port 80 and see if that printer responds on port 80. If it responds, then everything's okay. If not, then it means it might mean that this device is down. You can also use the HTTP service for it. You also have the option to do HTTP test and basically provide the monitoring configuration a URL to test. SysAid will go to that URL every 5 minutes when it does the monitoring test, and it will look for a certain phrase which you'll also configure. So if that's a login page and it has a field for username and a field for password, you can monitor the HTTP service and try to find the phrase username. And if it's not there, if the site is down, if you're getting a 404 message, which means the web server is up but you can't get to it, then HTTP service will alert you that it can't find the phrase username on that page and trigger the notification of your choice. Asset data is also something generic to the monitoring module. It basically looks into the fields of the asset and compares it with a certain value you'll set up. When it matches a criteria you'll define, it will trigger a notification. And let's take a look at the two examples I have here. If we're looking at the toner left on my asset, you can configure a notification, you can configure a monitoring test on that specific field, and configure it to notify you when that field goes below the value of 10. That means that when this goes below 10% of toner left, trigger a notification, maybe submit a service request. That's going to tell you you need to prepare yourself and make sure you have a new toner in stock, and it is available to install as soon as that one ends. And that way you can save time when that happens. You can be prepared for a case of toner running out. Another example is for monitoring performance on a firewall or a router. You know, these things have their own CPU and memory, and there's so much they can take that they can't really do unlimited amount of work. If a firewall goes beyond a certain percentage of CPU or RAM utilization, it becomes slow, network becomes slow, it might get stuck, and you want to get a notification before that happens. So you can use SNMP to pull the CPU or RAM utilization from that device and store it in a field, in a designated field in the asset form, and look into that field. When this goes beyond a certain threshold that you'll set, it's going to trigger a notification, again, a notification of your choice. That could mean inserting a service request, sending an email, even triggering a text message to your mobile phone. Of course, only if you have SMS integration configured, but that's a whole other topic. So these are the possible notifications that you can set up. Network activity is something that becomes more related to the SNMP protocol. You can choose one of the network interfaces and do a monitoring on the bandwidth for that interface. And you could have many interfaces to choose from. Again, let's use the switch as the example. Could have more than 48 interfaces on a device. You can choose the one that you want to monitor and define the threshold on it, and get a notification when that threshold is met or exceeded. That's a good example for using that. If you have a file server hooked to one of your switch ports, you might want to get a notification when that switch port gets used more than a certain amount of bandwidth. If that file server has a 1 gigabit interface, then you'll probably want to set up a notification when about 50% of it is being utilized. And the last option we have here, which is only available for SNMP devices, is traps. And traps are configured on the SNMP device itself. You need to go there into the management interface of the device, configure what type of events you want to send traps on, and which IP address to send that trap to. So if that's on the same network your SysAid server is located, you're going to want to send a trap to that IP address where SysAid server is running, and that's going to trigger the trap. If that's on a remote network, you're going to need to point it to the IP address of the computer that runs the remote discovery service, and that will forward the trap information to the SysAid server. Aside of configuring traps on the device itself, you also need to configure SysAid for that monitoring. SysAid will get the traps anyway, even if you don't configure that, but it only notifies you with whatever notification you wanted to trigger. It will only notify you if that monitoring is configured. You can configure trap monitoring for the device and decide what kind of notification you want to trigger when a trap is received. That's going to say what's going to happen when the monitoring gets a trap from the device. One more thing I wanted to mention here is that traps really depend on your configuration of the devices themselves. These are not defined in SysAid. You're only defined the notification that would get triggered in SysAid. That's pretty much it for monitoring. One more thing I wanted to state is that the traps could contain could mean many different things. These are configured by the devices themselves. There are several types of traps. You know, a network interface going down, going up, devices being you know, restarted. So look into the documentation for your devices and see what kind of traps they support and what could be configured.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for these technical highlights. I believe each and every one of you, if you didn't do so yet, that would like to go in more depth into the SNMP module within SysAid, I would offering to join our certification program, where you provide some more additional details about the SNMP, how to do it within SysAid, troubleshooting, trick and tips, and additional ways to configure and make the most out of the SNMP device. So certification program will be available starting from November 3, and we have along the year 4 certification program going into more depth in each and every module. Thank you again, Joseph, as always. Now I would like to ask you all to fill out a short survey. Let me, you just see a screenshot of the survey, but let me take you to our site. And if you can see right here, this is the, this is the link to the survey. The survey will allow us to improve ourselves in the next webinars, to provide and match the specific things that you would like to see in the future. So it will really help us if you just take the 4 or 5 minutes to fill out the survey, some short questions about the length, the technical, the relevance of these webinars. And again, we will improve, you get a better service, you will get better webinars in the future. So thank you again for cooperation, and press on the link right here, quick webinar survey, and I will take a 5 minutes break, allowing you to fill out the survey, and we will be back with best practices from Sarah Lav, VP of Customer Relations. Thank you. Hello, you all back again. Again, I would like to thank you filling out the survey, again allowing us to improve our service and provide you better webinars and more relevant webinars in the future. Now I would like to introduce Sarah Lav, VP of Customer Relations, for some best practices regarding the SNMP.
I hope that no introduction is needed,
Yeah.
but anyway, because I hope that people get a chance to hear me in past webinars and of course from my newsletter tip, and I hope I'm famous than you having to introduce me. Thank you for taking part in our survey. We started doing those webinars and we think you really enjoy them, but we thought it's a really good point to start asking you if there is anything you would like differently or more change in order for you to really enjoy those webinars. You need to understand if you could see what is going on before the webinars and outside what you can see in the camera, you would really enjoy the haptic and everything we do in order to provide you with those webinars. So my part in the webinar is providing you best practices, ways, things, new ideas on how you can take Joseph's great input and put them to good use, because this is basically what the webinar is all about. So my first tip for the day is green IT. It's a buzzword everybody uses, but we really want to take care of the environment, and SNMP is the way to do that. As you can see through everything that Joseph said in regards to printer usage, toner usage, electricity usage, you can use SNMP. So if we go just through a couple of examples that you can use, for example, you can monitor the paper usage on a printer. You can even monitor a projector within your conference room to understand if somebody left it on and it's currently usage electricity. As Joseph explained, you can even control the tuner usage. So if you've got higher usage of tuner, you can go and investigate and understand exactly what is the cause for it. Maybe the printer is broken and so on and so on. So SNMP provides you a lot of abilities to go green. The second tip for today is monitor equipment where SysAid agent cannot be deployed. SNMP provides you the ability to control network equipment, routers, projectors, and printers, and currently there is no SysAid agent that could be deployed on that equipment, so it enables you even to expand beyond the agent use. You can monitor whatever is important to you. As Joseph stated, customization options are available, and based on the capability of your equipment in regard to SNMP information, you can decide whatever is important to you. In one of our SysAid certification, we provided an example of even if you have a coffee machine that has an SNMP capabilities, you can even monitor the coffee usage. So whatever you decide that is important to you and SNMP supports it, SysAid can provide you that monitor capability. My last tip for today is a general thought. You have SysAid, you have your equipment. SNMP is already available for many years. So what currently we are offering you is to utilize what you already have, enable you to enjoy whatever you have even more based on the combination between SysAid and your equipment. So again, it was a pleasure, and I hope that, and I know that I'm going to see you all again in our next webinar. So thank you, and I'm going to put you back to Hanan.
Okay, thank you again, Sarah, for this best practices. Same as any webinar, this is your part in your show, and thank you very much for it. The last thing before we will summarize this webinar, I would like to introduce you with a new channel of communication with SysAid. We have just provided or made SysAid on Facebook, a new channel of communication for you here with SysAid. It will give you SysAid IT updates. It will give you some new videos available you can watch through Facebook, some screenshots, IT news, a sneak peek to new releases. By the way, we have just a new release in January, so sneak peeks to new releases, contest between our enthusiastic customers, mingling with other IT heroes around the world that will join this new channel, and even more. So the URL facebook.com/SysAid IT. Join us, like us, and it will be great to have you as friends with us in the new channel that we provide for you. That's it. I would like to thank all Joseph and Sarah attending this specific webinar. I would like to thank you. I'm sure that I will see you all in our next webinar. So 2 weeks from today. Thank you. 2 weeks from today. By the way, the next webinar will be about managing your software inside your organization, managing the license, controlling the license, and I'm sure I will see you all in our next webinar. So thank you again, and don't forget to visit us on our new channel in Facebook.